The following podcast contains spoilers and adult language, and the very first Bene Gesserit zombie. Yay!
This is a message from the Office of Emergency Preparedness. Due to the recent crisis, we ask that you remain in your homes. Do not attempt to communicate or interact with the creatures, even if they are people you know.
Lock your doors. Bar your windows. The dead are coming. It's time for Aim for the Head, an all Walking Dead universe podcast. And now, here are your hosts, Diana and Steve.
Hi, and welcome back to Aim for the Head podcast. I am Diana.
And I'm Steve.
And this week we are discussing episode number 4 of season 1 of the new series Dune Prophecy. The title of this episode is Twice Born. I went first last week, so it's your turn to go first. Steve, what are your thoughts on this episode? What did you think of Twice Born?
Well, let me think. I really liked this episode quite a bit. It had some really outstanding, like, creepy moments in it. Which the rest of, I've enjoyed the show so far, but this was really the first time I felt that it really went into more of the horror angle. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's my jam. So clearly I was like, oh yeah, and whether it was the nightmare opening sequence or the like creepy, let's everybody group draw thing that happens.
What do you mean?
Yeah, exactly. But they were really effective. And this idea of the reckoning and what is it and is it coming? And then also this kind of weird idea, the reckoning we've been assuming is Desmond Hart, but technically Lila now could be the reckoning because both of them were born twice, kind of in a weird way, right? So how is that? What how are they going to resolve it? What's it going to be? We don't know. But the other thing about this episode that I absolutely love is this is like the palace intrigue episode.
Yep.
Where you have Valia and she has her plan and scheme, and then you've got Desmond Hart and his plan and scheme, and then you got those poor pathetic little rebels and their plan and scheme, and the Emperor, and everybody's like got something going on, and they're all vying for power, and it's really I love that kind of stuff. So that was I just was eating all that up, watching as they're doing all this Machiavellian stuff, and it made me be cool if there was like a show that was like all like people like vying for control of like the power and like being able to rule, and like if they could set it in like a medieval thing with like dragons and stuff, that would be like a show I'd really like.
You might be onto something.
I don't know. It's not after Lord of the Rings, it's never really been tried, but I would really enjoy it.
Right. I'd love to see somebody give it a shot. I don't know. Dragons? Are people ready for dragons?
I don't know. So what did you think?
Yeah. What I look forward to is one of these days in the future, whether it's next year, 5 years, 10 years from now, somehow Steve is going to magically watch an episode of Game of Thrones and enjoy it a lot, and then feel regret over making fun of it for years and asking if there were dice involved and all that other stuff.
I was going to say, what is this Game of Thrones? Are there dice?
There are no dice. If you watched it, you would know. But I think it's hilarious that you always bring it up. You bring it up more than people that have actually watched the show. Anyway, so this episode, I would easily call this probably my favorite one so far, and for those reasons that you said. The creep factor, like I just really felt like a pit in my stomach because you really don't know what's gonna happen. They've had some deaths already. As far as they knew, like Lila was dead, and so we don't know these people, we don't know their stories, so they're all pretty much on the chopping block. So there's a lot of, there's a lot of tenseness over, not knowing what's going to happen next. A lot of people are in danger. And like I said, we don't know their story. So everybody who's in danger, they're all kind of equally in danger. It's not like someone's got some kind of plot armor that we don't know about.
Right.
So yeah, there were, like you said, there were some real like creepy moments. The dream sequence stuff was great. I can't wait to talk about that. And then just there was like you said, the palace intrigue stuff, but it was very focused. It wasn't like, there are some shows that can get like really in the weeds with like too many people, too much intrigue. This was very like, this is happening behind the scenes, and these are the good people, these are the bad people, these are, and it's, and it all kind of came to a head in this episode, and it was really, really well done, and I really, really, really liked this episode a lot. I finished it and then literally went back and started it again right away. Wow. So I could watch it again, and took my notes and whatever, and I'm like, there's so many things I can't wait to talk about. So yes, very excited, really, really liked this episode, and can't wait to talk about it with you folks. And I hope all of you really enjoyed it too. Let's move on to description of the episode, and then we will get into talking about writer and director, and then our points on the episode. So Steve, why don't you go ahead and discuss what happened on this episode according to IMDb.
All right. Well, again, this is episode 1.4 of Dune Prophecy, and the title is Twice Born. And the description that we have is as follows. After nearly all the acolytes have the same nightmare, Tula attempts to understand the origins of their disturbing dreams. Meanwhile, on the eve of the Great Lanrazad meeting, Valia sets her plan in motion to redeem House Harkonnen. Inez confronts her father about rumors surrounding Desmond, and Kyrian conspires to advance a rebel attack that the Sisterhood must try to thwart. Confused? Don't be. It'll all be resolved on soap. And that is your episode description. So
thwart is such a great word, and yes, more people should use it. So well done, whoever wrote the description on IMDb. Thwart is wonderful.
Yes, and I have to also compliment IMDb here in that they actually gave us a little bit more of a detail of stuff that actually happens in the episode. So that was good.
I agree. Well done. Good job, IMDb. Let's talk. We got 2 writers for this episode and the director for the episode.
Mm-hmm. Sure. So, the writers are a different pair. The director is the same director as last week. So our writers this week are a gentleman named Kevin Lau and a lady named Suzanne, and I'm going to say Rubel. Maybe W-R-U?
Sure.
Let's go with that. And Suzanne, if I butchered it, I apologize. And they, it's funny. We've been going through these 4 episodes, and I'm doing a little bit of internet research on the writers. I'm seeing a lot of common things in that almost all of the writers have written on Westworld previously. So. I'm guessing that, there's clearly the people that made the show had a lot to do with making Westworld, and now they're pulling in a lot of people they worked with previously, which I have absolutely no problem with. I loved Westworld. I thought it was a well-written show, and so I'm happy with that. But Kevin Lau, he wrote for Westworld. He also has written episodes for House of the Dragon, which we were just making fun of the game, the Are There Dice show, and that is what the prequel to it, right? Is that what it is?
It's the prequel of one specific house.
Yeah.
A family. Yeah.
And he also wrote episodes of the HBO series Lovecraft Country.
Nice.
So yeah, that was a well-written show, and so again, I think the guy's got some good chops, and like we both said, we really liked this episode, so I think we both enjoyed his writing contribution. And then, excuse me, Suzanne Rubel, again, she also wrote for Westworld, so there you go, and she also wrote for a show a couple years ago called Weird City. And she wrote for a show called The Outcasts. And she had a couple other credits as well, but those were the 2 that jumped out at me as like, oh yeah, I've actually heard of those or seen them. So again, a good writing team, and I think they do a really good job in this episode. Just the right amount of creepy, what the hell's going on, and then the palace intrigue stuff. I could watch that all day and twice on Sunday. So, and then our director is the same guy from last week. It's this guy Richard J. Lewis, And like I said last week, he's directed a lot. This guy's a pro. He directed episodes of CSI, Westworld, Ransom, A Million Little Things, Penny Dreadful, and Zoe's Extraordinary Playlist, just to name a few of them. And he has his credit list is quite long. He's probably directed like 15 or 20 different television shows so far in his career. So nice. That is your writers and your director.
Nice. I want to start off because usually when we start talking about the first moments of an episode, we're talking about images. Mm-hmm. But for me, the very first moment of the episode is a sound, and it's a thumper. And it's amazing because the way you could just do something that's like thump, thump, thump. And people will be like, oh, it's a heart, or maybe it's a thumper, or whatever. But it's so specific because for them, it's thump, thump, thump. Because it lifts up and it makes a noise when it lifts, and then when it comes down and thumps. So as soon as it made like one pass of up and then down, I was like, oh, it's a thumper. And it's just, and you could hear it used throughout the episode. You could hear it in the background. It was like, it was sort of driving the episode forward, and to start it in the dark. And that it was probably a part of their dream as well. They all had some kind of, the thumper in their dream at some point, Mm-hmm. So yeah, I just thought that was just such an ingenious way to get the episode off the ground. Amazing.
Yeah, well, you're talking about sound design. You're speaking my language, so yeah.
I am.
and you're right. It was very. I mean, that sound, thanks to the movies. Just I think everybody that's fans of the films, as soon as you hear that, you're like, oh, that's a thumper. So yeah, it's very distinctive, right? And and you're right that the sound of the piston lifting up the top part of the thumper is also a very distinctive kind of a hydraulic hiss or whatever it is.
Yep.
And it's and in this show, of course, we've seen the Desmond Hart talk about like his experience on Arrakis when the worm kind of eats him, right? Yep. And we see that there are like 4 thumpers around him, and they're very, very distinctive. They don't exactly look like the movie ones. They're clearly like a different version of them, which makes sense because this is like 10,000 years
ago
earlier. But at the same time, you're like, yeah, that's a thumper. So, and yeah, I agree. And it was a really intense way to kick off the episode, and we go from that, it's totally black, and we hear that sound, and then it just goes right into Emmeline's nightmare.
Yes.
Right. And
which
and
is
then,
your first note. Yeah.
Yes. Yeah. And she like again, the show kind of, it tricks you a little, right? In that she wakes up from having a bad dream, and she gets up and she kind of leaves her bed, and then she sees another acolyte like walking down the hallway, and she goes chasing after her like you do in your dreams, and this other acolyte goes out by the pool that they have. Then it's kind of like one of those like pools where you go and you kind of do like your deep thinking around, right?
Yeah. Like a reflecting pool.
A reflecting pool. That's the word I'm looking for. And I'm sure if they would have like zoomed in close, you'd see it was probably filled with like pennies and dimes that people have thrown in and made a wish in over the years.
Yeah, probably.
And of course, this is where Dorothea was, killed, shall we say, by Valia, many years earlier. And this is where she's, the girl that she's chasing puts the knife up to her throat and slices her throat, and then she turns around and finds out it's her, and it freaks her out, and she wakes up, and now we find out she's dreaming again, right? And it's just an incredible thing. And then Jen like goes running after her and saves her from like actually killing herself. I mean, it's a real intense nightmare moment.
Yeah.
And what I thought was really interesting is that it basically, her dream, she's recreating Sister Dorothea's death. and we get a little bit of what the two sisters have kind of like the cover story of how Dorothea died, and they, you know, it's sort of like she was so bummed out by the death of Raquella that she like literally slit her throat with her own knife.
Yeah.
And this story has stuck. That's what I think is funny. And people are like, yeah, okay, I believe it, you know.
Yeah.
But at the same time, as the episode goes along, you know, obviously the truth is starting to come out, it seems like. And you know, maybe whether that's Dorothea from beyond influencing their dreams, or maybe it's a worm or a Shia Halud on Iraq. We don't really know. But something is like reaching out to all the acolytes, except Jen.
Well, I have a question about that.
Yeah.
I think Jen had the nightmare. She's just saying she didn't. Because there's two things. She wants to set herself apart from people. She wants to stand out. I think that she comes from they've mentioned that she comes from some kind of really bad past. Like maybe she was abused as a child, or something makes it that she had like sort of an unsavory upbringing of some kind. And so I get the sense that a lot of what she does and says is very like she wants to be different than everybody else. And I also think she doesn't want to appear weak. So I think combined with those two things, because I watched it twice, I think because you're seeing Emmeline's dream, but then, and you know, when Jen is seeing all the people have the dream and they're, you know, either touching their neck or they're, you know, shifting their neck, they're all having some kind of problem with like either cutting their throat or stabbing, or there's something with the face and the neck or whatever. When Jen wakes up, she touches her neck. She's not asleep, but she touches her like neck or her like her face or in that area. So I think she woke up from having the dream and then saved Emmeline. And then when asked about it, oh no, I didn't.
Yeah.
So I mean, could she have had the dream? Could she have not had the dream? Absolutely. But I don't know why that would be. It makes more sense that if it's a group thing, then they all had the dream.
Yeah.
I don't know. That's just my take on it, is that she had the dream too. Whether that will be important later, I'm not sure. But I also think it was important that she saw what they did when they acted out, you know, which we'll talk about later with the drawing and everything. Right. But I think it's important that she, as an acolyte, saw what all the girls did and how they acted. They were almost kind of all under a spell. And so, you know, later, if someone tries to say it was something different, she can be the witness to be like, no, I was there. I saw everything. But anyway, yeah, that's just how I feel. I think Jen saw. I think she had a nightmare too. But
I agree with you that if she did, the reason she said she didn't was she doesn't want to appear weak. That exactly, totally fits her. That she's clearly adopted that tough gal persona and nothing bothers her, and you know what I mean, she's always like, yeah, whatever, you know what I mean, she won't, whether things are affecting her at all, she will never dare to reveal it, you know what I mean, that from whatever her upbringing was, clearly showing weakness was something that she learned you just don't do. And so I agree with you. It could be that. It also it could be one of those things where, you know, like and you used the word the witness, you know, and that was my other thought was she was chosen out of all the acolytes to not have the dream or the
so
message.
That she could be the witness.
So there's a witness, right? And then that's just whether that something about her made her likely to be chosen or just random. Again, will we find out? Who knows? But could be either one of those things. Yeah. But you're right. It's amazing. And then when you see like all the stuff that happens, because all of the dreams end up like we think back at the well.
Yeah. That's right? What it seems like, yeah.
But then, and I can't remember if it's is it in the beginning where the well turns into the Shai Hulud mouth, or is it later on when they're drawing that they make that realization? But
I think it's during the drawing. I'm not sure that in the dream itself we see that, but it becomes clear. If it's not clear in the dream, it definitely becomes clear when they're doing the drawing.
Yeah, for sure. But it ends up at the mouth of the well, and then like it literally goes almost in, like you go into the well, and then you just see the two eyeball lights or whatever,
and then it does the noise.
Yes,
which we don't know what it is.
Right, we don't. Well, actually, I if you slow it down, and I have some sound stuff, and I cleared it up, and this is amazing, people, and it says,
dare you
listen to the Aim for the Head podcast. I mean, how cool is that?
Do you think we're gonna find out what the voice says from inside the?
Oh, absolutely. Okay. Because again, later on, Tula is talking to the older gal who's like her assistant, and I can't remember what her name is, and they're like looking at the drawings. They've kind of gathered them all up, right? And she's like, they all started and they were drawing like personal stuff, and then it all shifted to they all drew sand, and then they all drew the well mouth and all this stuff, and Tula says, like, what if it's not a dream but a message? And so my thought is that they're going to continue having the dream. They're going to continue receiving whatever this message is, and each time we see it, it's going to be a little bit more complete. And so that whatever that voice is saying right now, it's and you have no idea what it's saying. But the next time we see it, it'll be a little bit more intelligible. And then the next time after that, it'll be a little bit more intelligent until finally we'll be able to understand what it is. Maybe whether that's episode 6 or whatever. But at some point, that's my gut feeling, is that the message is like slowly working up through their subconscious, and eventually they will be able to understand it. And it's going to be cool, whatever it is, right?
It's funny too, because as much as it is off-putting because you don't know what they're saying, you don't know if it's a person or if it's just a being or something like that. We don't know anything about it.
It's a worm.
That it has eyes. But it also makes me laugh a little too, because the noise that it makes, the sound it makes, even though we don't know, there obviously must be some kind of words, but they're muffled and we don't know. It sounds like the iPhone has like a canned ringtone that I think is either called Robot or like whatever. And if you play it, it goes like, and it literally makes me think of that. So
that's what it is.
It's just trying to, like, it's very creepy, but it also has an element of making me laugh. So I just want to, state that for
creepy
people.
Laughter with you.
It's creepy laughter. Okay. So the fact that it was a shared nightmare, the fact that, so we see Emmeline's portion, which is she recreated Sister Dorothea's, but it's like, are they all doing, do you think all of them had the same thing? We see the images, but do you think they all went to the well? They all had the knife, whether they pulled it or poked their, you know what I mean? Like, you think they all had exactly the same movements?
I do. I agree with the way Tula kind of breaks it down, and that the dream starts and it's all individual. They're all having their own stuff because it's all in their own heads. But then it's almost like a radio, and they tune in to this dream frequency, and then suddenly they're all on the same page. And like you said, you see them and they're all kind of touching their neck, or they're kind of doing that sort of turning their head back and forth kind of a thing. And so I think, they all are having the same stuff. Just Emmeline is maybe more of an empath or clairvoyant, that she was actually moved to get up out of bed and go there physically, right? And don't they kind of brush it off and say, well, she's just a sleepwalker, and so she did it? But I kind of look at it as, she's just a little bit more, she has a little bit more of ESP, or her brain is developed a little bit more than some of the other acolytes, so that she's a little more receptive. And so she was actually moved to go out there with a knife. I mean, she was very close. If Jen didn't like sprint to save her, right? And Jen's like out of breath when she like gets the knife out of her hand. I mean, so it was a very close call. Otherwise, she would have killed herself.
When you first start seeing Emmeline's, when you're in Emmeline's dream and she gets out of bed and she starts walking, she's following someone.
Mm-hmm.
Part of me was like, does she think that that's Lila and she's following her?
I thought it was Lila.
Yeah. Because at first you're like, that would really screw with all of them. And it would make sense because if she's in some kind of dream world or stuck in that sort of dream world she went to for the agony, it's like, could she stay there and still be speaking to the acolytes through their dreams? You know, it would have been interesting.
Yeah.
And I hate those moments where someone's like, you're following someone in a dream, and just as you're about to catch up to them, you turn the corner and they're like way down the hallway.
They're
so you
super
gotta go
far away.
You can't see them, and they can't hear you, they can't see you. So there's this weird, like, I'm trying to pursue. And it's something that you yourself have probably dreamed about at least once in your life.
Oh yeah.
And so you get that sort of like anxious feeling in your stomach where you're like, oh, I hope she catches her. Oh, you still can't see her. Who is it? Are they going to hurt her? Is it someone she knows? Is it, so all
is it going to be creepy?
Yeah. I mean, it's already creepy. So is it going to get creepier?
Yeah. Right. So,
and
when I just to finish the point, the first when I watched the episode twice as well, and the first time I watched it was Sunday night, and I thought for sure it was Lila, and I'm like, ooh, and just like you said, Lila's like doing like the Jedi thing where she can appear as like an astral projection or something, because like you said, her conscious is like stuck in wherever she went,
right?
With agony, and the fact that Tula's giving her the spice, trying to wake her up. Maybe that's like giving her the ability to actually, get into the dreams of her friends and the other acolytes or something.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I watched it the second time, it's because obviously I know where it's going because I've seen it. I know what's going to happen.
Right.
It's clearly it's Emmeline. You can tell she has the same black ponytail that, you know what I mean? And so I'm like,
exactly.
Oh, okay. So, and again, once you have those, you know who it is. And then you start watching again, you're like, oh yeah, okay, clearly it is. But they have her far enough away that if you don't know who it is, you can't necessarily go, oh yeah, that's her. And it was wonderful. I thought it was a really great touch.
Yeah. Great, like, pull you in opener to the episode.
Oh yeah.
And then we jump to we're back to the Harkonnen house, and we've got Valia and what is her nephew's name? I just call him the Baron.
Yeah.
I can't remember his
it's like Vasny or something like that.
Something, whatever. Not important. But the very first thing you see in there, and I didn't notice it the first time around, but the second time is, you've got Valia sort of standing in like the dining room or the hall or something, and she's looking at the wall, and there's like this piece of art there, and it's like this sort of abstract sculpture, but it's all in white, and you have to sort of pause to sort of get a good look at it. And it really gave me the idea. It looked a lot like something in the Arctic, like it looked like a whale that was like, I got like in the shapes and stuff, it looked like a shape of a whale, but like on like a snowy, icy like shore or something, or land. And it just like the whole thing evoked whale and like snow and cold, like in that photo. So it was almost like her past in the, not photo, I'm sorry. It was like sculpture, because it was against the wall, like a painting, and in the shape of a painting, but it was 3-dimensional.
Oh,
so
yeah,
it had like texture to it. And I just thought that it was really amazing, because a lot of their other stuff that they have in this sort of like new location, where it's still not clear if they're on the same planet, on a different planet. They've obviously come up a little bit because the house is really nice.
Hey, the house has electricity. They've certainly come up.
Yeah. But they do have like pieces of art on the wall. That, of course, is the painting of Griffin, etc. Mm-hmm. But like, there's other things that are a little more dark and foreboding, a little more Art Deco-y. You can see it sort of sliding into the Harkonnen that we are familiar with. Mm-hmm. The blacks, the darks, the macabre, the whatever. And this is just this one piece on the wall. It's just this slab, a huge piece, and it's white.
It's white,
and
yeah.
It really stands out. So I thought that was a really, really interesting choice there. I really liked it.
Yeah, it's funny. I thought it was like my first thought, and this, even after I watched it a second time, I still had this thought. It was like a piece of whale blubber is what I thought it was.
Ooh, interesting.
Because it was very contoured, and it was like probably about 4 or 5 inches thick,
Yeah.
And you just corrected that. That's so funny. I read that. I read your quote, and I'm like, I don't think that's the quote, but I left it because I figured you would do it. And we'll get to that in a minute. But anyway, I did. I that was my thought. I'm like, wow. But it makes sense because clearly right now for the House Harkonnen, the whole whale trade, that's all they have.
Right.
And so, of course, it made sense to me that they're going to have they got a piece of whale blubber and they like sealed it in plaster or something so it doesn't smell, and it's on the wall because that's their livelihood, that's their business, that's what they do. And you're right. The other thing about it that I thought was really interesting is that everything in House Harkonnen is black.
Yes.
All of them wear black. They, you know what I mean? It's very kind of cave-like. It's very dark. And then amongst all of that, there's this big white piece of art on the wall.
Right.
So yeah, it's definitely it stands out. And I mean, like even the painting of Griffin, which is really a creepy painting, by the way. To me, it's just like, oh, well, God, why would you have that in your house? It's like, that's our dead son. You know what I mean? It's like, what do you do?
It gives real Vigo from Ghostbusters 2 vibes.
Does,
you know what I mean?
Right? That's a good call. Yes, it's a good pull there from Ghostbusters 2. I love it.
Just the how it's funny because a majority of the painting is very dark and kind of, somber, but his face is painted really light. And he does look very, kind or, nice.
He's not scowling, at least.
Right, yes. Right. Where any of the other Harkonnens would be that way.
Yeah,
but yeah, it's interesting that the painting is there. Like, that's not Yevgeny's son, the old dude. That's his nephew.
It's his nephew.
And yes, he does say the thing later where he's like, he was our hope, our pride and joy. I love how he's in front of his son and talking about how he's like, he was our last big hope. And you're like, thanks, Dad.
Yeah.
Love you too. Yeah.
And to answer your other question, it in this episode, I thought it was made a little bit clear that they are not on the whale planet anymore.
Yeah, it seems that way. It really does.
Yeah, there was a line in there, and might have been the uncle that said it, where they said, back on, and they said the name of the planet, Lankville or whatever. Yeah, and so the way that line was said, that I took from that, okay, clearly that means that wherever they are now, it's not there. But again, we don't know. Maybe they're just on a different part of that planet, a more developed part or whatever. It's still, they haven't come right out and said. But that was certainly the what I inferred from that one particular line. But so we start out with that, and we get to Valia, and you find out just like how truly distasteful this all is for her being there.
Oh God, yes. She just really does not want to be there.
No,
at all.
No. Oh God.
We pivot away. We're at the Harkonnens for only a short time, and we pivot away to the palace. And there's a bunch of really great scenes. Where I know you've got your line there from Desmond, and I've got the one from the Emperor. Do you know? I can't remember where Desmond was when he says that line.
Yeah, no, your line happens when they're like eating breakfast, like
for sure,
overlooking the water.
Yeah.
And the line that I have with Desmond happens when Desmond is back in his room and he's ripping the pages out of the Sisterhood book and burning them.
Oh, okay, yeah.
So it's a little bit after, yeah.
So we've got this scene by the water with the Emperor and his family. And Desmond is there, and of course, the princess is like horrified by this.
Oh, yeah.
And it's and talking about how how can he sit here? He's a murderer, and da 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 da. And
yeah, and they're talking about this that someone has started up a rumor that the kid, the Richese kid, was murdered.
Yeah.
And the official story they've come up is that like the little toy thinking machine reptile like somehow burst into flames and burned him up. That's like the cover story, and yet there is this rumor that has started, and so the Emperor's like, who started the rumor, and and he sees this as a sign of disrespect and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But and so Inez, the princess, she is taking the rumor to mean that Desmond Hart is the person that killed the kid. And so anyway, so that's kind of what's going on when she comes into this amazing. I mean, I would love to eat breakfast like that every day.
Hello, al fresco, right by the the rocky ledge,
overlooking like the Mediterranean or something, right?
Yeah,
I mean,
it's
this gorgeous, sea and everything, and so it's amazing, and so she comes out and basically is kind of, what would you say, chastising her father for letting Desmond Hart anywhere near them and associating with them, because in her eyes, she's not wrong. I mean, that kid was like 8.
Yeah,
and
it's not like you got rid of an enemy who was like an adult who made the choice to do whatever. Like, the kid was like a little kid who was playing with a toy.
Yeah, he's a little kid, and was he kind of a brat? Yeah, he was, and he was not very nice to Inez, but I mean, he didn't deserve that, right? I mean,
right.
So he if it had been like his father or something, you could at least go, yeah, that guy had 30 years of all kinds of potential crimes, and who knows what he did. He was a grown ass man now. So, and that's, I think, what outrages Inez so much, is that this was a small child that was, literally brutally, painfully tortured and murdered. And the fact that the Emperor is kind of like, can't make an omelet without breaking a few eggs. That's really not sitting well with her, because she tells Kyrian a little bit later, she's like, my father is a good man.
Yeah.
So it's like she clearly believes her dad to be able to be compassionate and do the right thing, and right now he's just getting a lot of bad counsel from this Desmond Hart guy.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And it just is like, he needs to go.
Yeah.
But anyway, so you get there's a one of the funnier lines in the show is what you wrote down.
They're talking about the rumor itself, and that someone's spread this, and the Emperor is very like, he's offended, he's very upset, and he says, but he's not so much, and it's so funny, he's not so much upset with the content of the rumor. He says, he's like, what really upsets me is the talking behind my back. And Anna says, that is the definition of a rumor. And Constantine is there and just laughs his ass off.
Oh yeah,
because she's just giving it to him. And there was a cute little moment where she was basically showing how, out of touch, I would say. The Emperor feels out of touch most times they talk to him. Like he's just barely figuring things out. And she just revels in making him look stupid in that moment. And Constantine laughing is hilarious, because he's always thought of as lesser, in his father's eyes. So it's interesting. It was a great little moment there.
What's great about Constantine is that Inez like keeps protesting about all this, and eventually she and the emperor, like, I think Inez says, like, despite what happened and the marriage is off, she's like, I still want to go and stay with the sisters like we planned. And the emperor and the empress are like, yeah, that's not going to happen anymore. And the emperor's like, yeah, I need you here by my side so we have a united front. And she like loses it, and she's like, yeah, there's no way. She goes storming off, right? And then Constantine gets up to come with her, and the emperor's like, sit down, and he's like, yep, I'm gonna sit down. I mean, it just he is just obviously, he has so little status because he's like a stepson. He has no claim to the throne at all, right? He's probably like 20th in the line of succession or something. You know what I mean? There would be so many other people that would become emperor before him that he literally is like, I cannot afford to like get kicked out of the house.
Yeah, no kidding. This is the only thing I have. It's not a lot, but it's the only thing I have.
It's the only thing I got. Yeah. Which is really funny because later on, Inez like pumps him up and is like, you are the bravest person I know. And I'm like, he's a total coward. What are you talking about? But yeah, anyway, that was a fun little sequence where Inez is clearly, she's got a lot of her mother in her, I think. Yeah. In that, she has some backbone and some ideas of what she wants to get out of her life, and she's not afraid to like get her hands dirty to achieve it. Yeah. So, but that was a fun scene, and again, just a gorgeous location. Oh my God.
Yeah. Oh, beautiful. So we sort of pivot away from there to indoors, and we get this scene with Desmond and the Emperor comes in, and he's burning these pages, and we come to find out it's Kasha's journal.
Yeah. Or a book or something that she had.
Yeah, where she's just sort of recording things there. And he's like tearing out a page, burning a page, Yeah. It just, the audacity.
Oh, yeah. And it's funny because, he's already said that his agenda is to get rid of all the sisterhood, just eradicate it. And so he got Valia kicked out of the palace, right? So she's there's no longer a sister truthsayer like consulting with the emperor. And then he like tells the emperor, like, we should get rid of all of the truthsayers at all the houses. And it's great because Mark Strong, the way he says this line, he's like, get rid of all the truthsayers. I might as well admit I have something to hide.
Yeah.
Which is fun and true. It's like, yeah, okay, you get rid of those that you might be revealing a little more than you want. Yes. And of course the Emperor, he's just the way it's funny, Mark Strong, the way he's playing it, he's very befuddled. Don't you get that sense? He's just sort of like,
that's a really great word to put.
Where he's just like, things just like don't make sense to him enough, right? Like he gets it, but not all of it. And he's very concerned about his legacy, and he talks about how his dad and his grandfather, they won battles and defeated tyrants and did all these things that are worthy of being remembered. And he's like, and I kind of just like inherited my title because of my birthright, and have done nothing to deserve it. And of course Desmond's like, well, how do you want history to remember you as? And it's like the kind of giving him these really kind of, influential kind of suggestions of, hey, man, you know what? Right now, you are basically writing what the history books are going to have for you 20 years from now, 100 years from now, 500 years from now. Yeah. And this is the chance. This is the time for you to make your legacy. And, do you want to be remembered as a pushover that the Lannister just walked all over all the time? Or do you want to be remembered as the guy that, cracked the whip and brought order to the galaxy here? And the Emperor responds with something like, it'll take my power away or I'll lose my power. And Desmond has this great line where he says, no one can take your power away from you unless you let them.
Right.
And then he goes, "This is a time to be bold." And he points out, Desmond points out that, I killed that little kid, but the little kid like broke like the number one law we have.
Yeah.
Which is, he had a thinking machine, and they didn't say this, but my guess is like the penalty for breaking that law has got to be death, right?
Yeah.
It's got to be, if you're caught with a thinking machine, you're executed, because thinking machines almost wiped out the whole species.
Right.
And so we're not going back there. And
but it's clear based on like this episode that has become a little lax.
Oh my God. Yeah.
And so it's sort of like an unwritten thing that like there is some black market trade of that going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And you see like several of the heads of these houses like handling and dealing with these like little machines, kind of like the kid's toy. They were kind of like, the one guy picked one up and it had kind of like some legs, and it was like a kind of like a sphere almost, and clearly it had all kinds of flashing lights and going boop, 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 and all that stuff. So I mean, definitely a some sort of a computerized thing. And yeah, I got the same idea that under this particular emperor, they're not quite enforcing that rule as strictly as they probably did right when the war ended 100 years ago, where it was like anybody with a machine, we're just killing you right there, you're dead, Right. And remember in episode 1, when the kid took the toy out and it ran across the floor and stuff, there was sort of this sort of like, clutching of the pearls and my stars and garters reaction from all those people. And the dad was like, hey, let's not let this one little kid playing with the toy ruin the whole engagement, right?
Right.
And what did the emperor do? He kind of looked around and he saw everybody was looking at him, and he's like, we'll deal with this later, and just kind of swept it under the rug. So yeah, I agree with you that this has become there's a lot of people are taking a lot of liberties with the law because they know the emperor is not strong and they can get away with it.
Yeah. And I think that's part of Desmond's thing, is that he's seizing on like the emperor wants to appear strong, and he's seizing on this opportunity to sort of have a pet thing that he can sort of say, I'm not going to be lax about this one thing anymore.
Right.
And it'll sort of go from there. So I think it's it's an interesting combination. I think when we find out more about Desmond, we'll find out if was the emperor chosen? Was was he specifically picked, or, did they, but we have to understand what Desmond's greater purpose is before we know, any more about that. But I'm dying to know more. So away from the palace briefly, and then we get a couple of great scenes back with the Harkonnens where Valia is trying to get her nephew to agree. She's doing two things actually she's doing all kinds of stuff. She's got her finger in a lot of pies. She's doing she sent out all of her other Reverend Mothers to speak to other nobles and let them know that, it's really important that someone says something about the Richese boy, that it's very important that people are held accountable for it. But if you don't want to do it, you should have someone else do it. Basically, they're talking other people into, hey, the whole plan is we'll allow House Harkonnen to become a member of the Landsraad, but they have to do this. They have to be the one to
like officially
lodge a complaint about the emperor and the death of the boy.
Yeah, like start an inquest or something officially. Yeah. And I think actually the Harkonnens are a house, but the invitation was to like join the High Council.
Right, exactly. Exactly.
And they it's kind of unclear, but what has happened is that the Richeses were on the High Council and they've withdrawn, and they're no longer, they're just a house, and they are not raising an inquest into the death of their son. And that's kind of where the other truthsayers for all these houses, they're kind of whispering in their leaders' ears saying, clearly something happened to the boy, and like one of them says that like the odds of like the toy killing the boy is like 1 in like 200 million or some weird, extremely improbable thing. And the leader's like, are you saying that the Richeses are being like forced to not raise a complaint? And again, who's the one person who could do that? That's the emperor, right? And so the only recourse they have is to raise this inquisition and start an inquest. But by doing that, you're basically calling out the emperor, which is not a good idea. And so I love it when they cut between the various truthsayers, and they're like, you have to find a house that would be willing to do that because the gain outweighs the risk. And they're like, what house would that be? And then they're like, someone who's desperate, someone that needs to get out of their situation. I mean, and they're just
they're like just low and not a lot of position, and you're like, oh my God.
It's so funny because you just know that all of those guys that are hearing, they're like, I know who that is. That's the Harkonnens. and so then when they all show, because remember, like her cousin is complaining to her saying that, you told me that like I'd be on the High Council, and the Landerstad meeting is almost over and nothing's happened. And then literally there's like a knock at the door and she goes over and the door opens up and it's the 3 guys, and they're like, oh, Baron Harkonnen, we want to invite you to join the High Council. And then she's like, you were saying? and so then they take the meeting and they're explaining they want him to do all this stuff, and he like goes, excuse me, and then he leans back over like he wants to confer with her, and she leans forward and he goes, nicely done. It was so funny. I really like that guy because he's just like spineless enough yet not that he's fun to me, that the Harkonnen Baron. I think he's a good guy. But yeah, so they tell him what he has to do, and he's like, no, well, I'll do it, absolutely, I'm in, you know. And he's seeing it. This is his chance at the brass ring, and he's grabbing it. So
he does. To be fair, he's not stupid. He does hesitate.
Oh yeah,
he's scared. But he is talked into it by Valia, saying, you know, this is your chance. You'll be seen as strong and etc.
And you'll be on the High Council.
Yeah, and it's within that she makes a great comment, which I included in my notes, which is she's trying to tell him that no one is above the law, not even the Emperor. Which I thought was really interesting to have that storyline, you know, considering the politics of America these days.
What are you saying?
I'm saying absolutely nothing because I don't want people to not listen to our podcast.
Well, we haven't gotten into like what the Supreme Court of the Dune universe will rule what the Emperor is accountable for and not accountable for. So that's in episode 7 of this season. It's coming up. It's later on.
Pretty soon. But you know, Valia does her best to, you know, and she's not wrong. Doing something this bold will make him seem very strong, if everything works out the way he wants it to, which it doesn't. No. Spoiler alert. But it's nice to think that might have worked. Yeah. You know,
I see. I can't help but think that she, you know, she has nothing but contempt for her family. Other than her sister. And like it was like Griffin and Tula, those were the 2 people in her family that she has any respect for. And as far as, you know, is this going to blow up in his face by, you know, basically accusing the Emperor of killing this kid and covering it up? Yeah, but she doesn't care. I think this is going to advance her goal more than help him. You know what I mean? That's what I took from it, was that that, yeah, there's a chance this could work out for House Harkonnen, and they will, improve their status and so on. But most likely it's not, and she's okay with it.
Yeah. Yeah. You've got a great quote in there too that I think centers around like some of that storyline as well. It's a great Valia quote that you put in there.
Yeah, I think she's talking with Theodosia, and they're talking about Desmond Hart, and this sort of like they believe that he killed the kid, and what was her name, the other truthsayer for the Emperor, Vasha. Is that no? What was her name?
Kasha.
Kasha, that's it. Kasha. Yeah. And so Theo is kind of like asking, well, why don't we just, go, and why all of this subterfuge against the Emperor? Why not just move against Desmond Hart? And Valia says it's not wise to attack an enemy you don't understand head on. And again, at this point, I think too, the context of the scene is Valia with her, she's kind of like the bartender girl with the blue Fremen eyes is like her informant. So she knows a lot about what the rebels are planning to do. And so her plan to like get back in the Emperor's good graces is to thwart this bomb plot that they're going to try and do at the Lanrasad meeting. And so she's going to step in and save everybody, and that will win over the Emperor, and then she'll be back, by his side giving his advice and all that stuff. And Theo is like, well, why don't we just go right at Desmond Hart, because he's the one that is, clearly our adversary. And that's when she points out, it's just not a good idea because we don't understand yet what we're dealing with.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
And I think it's at that point that she like has taken the knife out and she like throws it and like kills like this bug that crawled out of the wall or something, right? Doesn't she do that? And it kind of shows you that, don't mess with this woman, she'll kill you. But yeah, and that we should also mention that is that we do get a little bit of the rebels, which is Kyrian Atreides, who's the weapon master for the Emperor that Inez is sleeping with, and his buddies are planning this rebellion basically. And remember in one of the episodes he was like using a device that was like mapping out the air ducts in the palace. And getting like a map of him. And now it's gone another step, and they've gotten this guy to deliver them what looks like a seeker from the Dune movies and the Dune books. It's this little teeny dart-like thing that's maybe about 3 inches long that hovers, and they're going to let it into the air ducts, and they're going to program it to go through the air ducts to get to that room, that conference room, that throne room where all the nobles are and the emperor's there and the empress, and it has some kind of a warhead in it. And once it gets there, Kyrian is going to take off one of the grates so it can get into the room, and then it's going to blow up and kill everybody. And, that's their idea of starting the revolution. And, then what does the guy say? The spice will flow for everybody or whatever.
Yeah.
And so this Valia knows all this, and she's like, nope, let it happen, and then I'll stop it at the last minute and save everybody, and that will get me back in the good graces of the Emperor. So that's kind of what's going on. Again, we have all these schemes, right? And then I think the other thing that happens after that is Desmond Hart, the Empress, drops off like all this surveillance footage to him. Of like people dealing with these illegal thinking machines. And she's like, we have all this stuff, but it's been kind of lax around here. And again, she didn't tell him what to do, but she tells him what to do. And so then there's a scene where he like goes out like to like 10 or 12 of the like Imperial Guardsmen, and he gives them all these little files, and he's like, go out there and bust some heads. And so they kind of go out. So you have all of these schemes that are unfolding at the same time, right? You've got Valia and her plan. You've got the rebels and their plan. You've got Desmond Hart and his plan. You've got the leaders of the Land Rosette and their plan. You've got the Baron Harkonnen and his plan. I mean, it's all of this stuff, and it's all going on at the same time. And I absolutely love it because it's so great because you're like, oh, what's going to happen?
Yeah, no kidding. I mean, this is like the palace intrigue stuff is really just coming to a head. It's fantastic.
And what's great about this episode is that it's like you have two plot lines. You have this really just delicious palace intrigue, and then you have the what the hell creepy bizarro stuff going on Wallach 9 with the sisterhood, and they keep cutting back between the two, and it's great. I think the pacing of this episode is fantastic.
Oh yeah. The way that they went from scene to scene and just like each time it just ratcheted things up. So speaking of which, we again move away from palace intrigue / Harkonnen stuff, and even like the Kieran and his peoples, with their planning. And then we get the best scene of the whole episode.
Oh yeah.
Which is the drawings. And it is like, I'm literally thinking about the scene and I literally just got goosebumps while I was sitting here. It's so wonderful. I mean, the scene itself is structured so well. You know, Tula with this assumption that she's in control of any kind.
Oh yes.
And she's trying to lead them, and they are drawing, like they have like charcoal in their hand, and they're drawing each thing that they encounter in their dream. Well, they're going through all the images again. Yeah.
Don't they ingest spice first?
They take spice. Yes.
So, and that like kind of opens their inner eye and allow them to like, you know, almost, and she's talking to them, and it's almost like she's like putting them in a trance. Did you not get that idea that she's like, you know, go into your inner eye and go back to the dream, but you're in control, right? And she's saying all these things, and it's like, you know, draw the first image, and they all start, scribbling, right? And you're right, it's an incredible visual because there's like 16 of them, and they're all sitting at this table. There's like 8 on a side, and it might even have been a square table, and there were people on the corners too. But they're all drawing, and so you're hearing these charcoal pencils scratching away on these big like sketchbook things.
Yeah,
right?
Big sketch pads. Yeah.
Yeah, and so that they draw a little bit, and it's what I loved is when Tula's like, all right, now let your mind go deeper, and then all of them in like unison flip the page, and you get that sound, right? And then they all start scribbling again, and it's like, and as soon as it starts, I'm like, oh my God, Tula, you are not in control of this at all.
Yeah, no kidding. It's as it increases in intensity, and as each image, you know, it moves from this one to, oh my God, it's the mouth, you know, that, and we know what it is because we've already seen that moment with Emmeline in the beginning. And then, you know, they're drawing the circle, like it's going to be like this, you know, the pool of water. But then you see that it's like, it's got the teeth, and you know that it's the mouth of the worm. And then when they flip the page, and then when they draw the inside of the worm with the eyes in there, it is, that image of the inside with the 2 eyes, and each one of them, it is exactly the same.
Oh, it's
exactly
great.
The same. And it is just amazing. And it's great because leading up to that moment, they are fully in this trance, and Tula, like you're saying, she has no control. She's trying. You know,
she's like, wake up, everyone, you're back. You have control. And
like, like, you know, you come to the, you know, place your feet flat on the ground, and you are, you know, you are here, and you're safe, and da da da. And it's just like, oh my God. And then when they do come out of it, and she admits it later in that really great scene with, I forget her name, but that other sister.
Yes.
I always forget her name, but she's Dorothea devotee.
She was her number one fan.
Yeah, she's definitely very devoted to her, and a true believer, as it were. But she's also for the sisterhood. So she does align more with Dorothea, but you can see in that scene later that she has with Tula that her ultimate concern is to keep the sisterhood safe and to keep all of their sisters safe and etc. So even though she's it seems she's very judgmental of Tula most of the time, in that moment I felt like they were colleagues, like they were equals. When Tula was describing how, you know, they're going through the pictures and she's like, this is, you know, this is where I by the time they got here, like I had lost control. They weren't being guided by me. They were being guided by something else, you know. Yes. And that's when she said that.
Guided by the fear, didn't she say?
Yeah, exactly. And they're just like going through these images together, and it's the other sister who sees the warm mouth, and she says it's Shai-Hulud. So
it's not the well, it's Shai-Hulud.
Yeah. And it's
I just looked it up. I think her name's Avila.
That sounds about right.
Was that her name, Sister
Yeah, that
Avila?
sounds about right. Yeah. Okay. But she's you know, they're coming to conclusions together. They're working together to try and fix this, to try and figure out what their next steps are. But the scene itself with the drawings is just amazing. It's so tense and you don't know what's going to happen. And, you know, they didn't have any problems with killing off Lila. I mean, she's resurrected, obviously, but, you know, for a show that didn't have any problems with one of the young characters dying, like it could have happened. It could have been like a mass. What if they all slumped over in their seats? So you're sort of sitting and watching
they,
like
they killed like 30 Atreides guys without blinking an eye. Okay?
Yeah, no kidding. So could they have all like gotten to and then that's the end of it.
Yeah,
and, you know, it's interesting.
Just the pacing of it, because it starts out and she's like, take the spice, and they do, and then it's like, okay, and she's, you know, talking very calmly, right? And it's like, you know, your feet are on the ground, let's go in and let's go to your first level, and they start drawing, and they're all kind of casually, they're not like intense, but then as soon as it's like, now go deeper, then it's like almost like it speeds up,
right?
And they start drawing faster, and she's a little like, oh, that's weird. It shouldn't be like that. And then it's like, all right, let's go deeper. And then it gets and it's almost like a snowball going down a mountain, or like a runaway train, where it's just getting faster and faster and more out of control. And the panic in Tula, it goes up, where she's no longer calmly saying, everyone take a deep breath, and in through your nose and out through your mouth. No, she's like, wake up. You know what I mean? She's like, oh my God, stop. It is an unbelievable scene in that it is super intense. It's super weird because they're all drawing the same thing. And when they go and they all do the circle of the well, right?
Yeah.
And then they're all like filling it in, just feverishly scraping and scribbling to fill it in, and you see all those pictures, and it's just this black circle except for the two spots they left open for the eyes. I mean, yeah, it is. It's just a creepy thing where you're like, what is that?
Yeah. It just fills your it's just so much dread, you know what I mean? And again, like they give like you don't hear the voice again, like that with the voice, but you get it's almost like they wake up. That's what wakes them up. I wonder, was the voice talking to them in the dream when they're redoing it, so that, you know, all of it, that's right about when you would hear that noise, and then they all wake up at the same time.
And they're back. Yeah. And we should point out that Jen is again a witness
to this whole thing. Yeah.
She is not partaking because, according to her, she did not have the dream. And so she's just sort of like there watching as all this stuff is going down, you know?
Yeah.
And so it was a crazy scene. And I also thought it was interesting that before they do that scene, we'll just call her Avila, because I think that's her name. She cautions Tula to like, don't pursue this because you'll be, you know, you could be causing panic and creating panic in among the sisters if you are bringing attention to the fact that they had this dream and making them think about it. And then later on, after that scene happens, and Avila's like, well, we have to figure this out. We have to, see what it means. And Tula looks at her and goes, well, that would cause panic. Kind of like throws the line right back at her. It's just like, whoa, you said this was a bad idea, remember? And yeah, it was fun. It just that all of the stuff on Wallach 9 I thought was just super weird and creepy and fun.
Yeah. We jump from there to, we get this great scene in the nightclub with Kieran and the princess. Yeah. And there's a lot that happens there. And ultimately, the most important thing is that, she really wants him to be a part of her cause, but he clearly has his own cause that he has to follow, that we saw in the previous moments there. And so you really you have this moment where they're both sort of working at opposite ends of opposite purposes, but they still really like each other. Like, you're cute. And they still want to, they feel like regret. Like, I this is really important, and I want you to be there with me, both of them. But although to be fair, does Kieran really want her around? Because when he saw her, he was like, okay, this might not go well. Yeah, the fact that she's here, the fact that, she can, what if she finds out what we're doing? The
fact that, her whole family's going to be dead tomorrow. Right. Possibly her too. I mean, he's sitting with like the main rebel conspirator guy, and they're like sucking on those, spice pipes and getting, they're tripping balls, right? Certainly the one guy is the conspirator guy. She comes in and sits down right next to him, and she's like, oh, who's your friend? Or introduce me to your friend. And Kieran's like, no. And the guy gets up and kind of stumbles away, because Kieran's like, oh my God, she could blow the whole thing.
Yeah.
Because if she's here, maybe there's like a chaperone or something here. And now they're going to be like, who is she associating with? Right. It's just, this is like the worst possible thing for him, is to have her show up now.
Yeah,
with what's going on. Right.
So, and he immediately is like, let's go. And, takes her to another part of the room where they can talk it through. And there's some really great moments there where, I love, and he said it a couple of times in that scene, but he says to her, he says about himself, righteous but not pure, which I think was really says a lot. That's a really good phrase for this episode, because a lot of people are acting that way, righteous but they're not pure, because they're everybody's got like an ulterior motive, the Baron, the Emperor and his wife, Inez, Desmond, Valia, and the Harkonnens, and all everybody's like trying, they're all doing something behind the scenes that is not matching really what's going on in front of it. And Kieran himself, he's a palace guard. He works with the Emperor, and he's gonna work on a plot to try and kill him. And her family.
And all the Landresset. I mean, if that thing would have worked, if their plan would have worked, everybody that was in that room where the ceremony's going on, they all would have died, all of them.
Yeah, I mean, no kidding.
So that was the whole idea, is like, literally they're going to cut the head off of the Imperium and just create chaos. Then somehow, they'll be able to pick up the pieces. Like, step 2 is never really explained in their plan. They just kind of have step 1, which is blow everybody up. But what the thing that blew my mind about that scene is that Inez is like talking to him, and she's talking about how horrible Desmond Hart is, and that he's a murderer, and he's killed all these Fremen, on Arrakis already for years and years, and Desmond, or not Desmond, Kieran, he says something like, everyone's dealt with atrocities. He's like, my father survived an atrocity years ago. And that blew me away, because that tells me that the little kid that Tula told to get lost after all the Atreides were dead was Kyrion's dad.
Yep.
And again, everything's freaking connected.
Yeah. I really hope like they brought him up. Like I hope did they mention, is he living?
The dad, they did not. He just said his dad experienced this mass tragedy when he was a kid.
Yeah.
And
I think it'd be great to see him again, because he'll clearly remember Tula. You
think, right?
Yeah.
And the fact that she did such a good job of changing her name from Tula Harkonnen to Tula Vale. So it's like,
it won't be hard to find out.
No.
How many Tulas are there in this world? Who can do all of that stuff, are that smart,
Right. Well, here's a question that I have for you that I was thinking about. Do you think that like people outside of the Harkonnen family know that Valia and Tula are Harkonnens? So like when she goes walking down, the street and people are like, oh, Reverend Mother, hello. Do you think that they see her as she's the person in charge of the sisterhood, or they're like, oh yeah, she's part of the Harkonnen clan, and she happens to be running the sisterhood?
I think people know. I don't think it's a secret, but I think because they are such an insignificant house, that when people see her, they see her as the Reverend Mother first, and I don't think they even think of her as being a Harkonnen. Like, that seems like it's something that's in the past, especially since, like the uncle says, it's not like she comes and visits all the time or anything. It's right. She really has separated herself from them. So yeah, I think people know, but I don't think people think of it when they see her.
Okay.
I think that part of her life is gone at this point.
Yeah, that she's basically associated with the sisterhood completely and does not identify as a Harkonnen. Even though clearly it is her thing.
It's interesting how the uncle, he seemed to know what Tula did.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, so that wasn't... So I'm curious if you will get that scene of, like, the family coming to sort of help, like, okay, we need to hide her and squirrel her away or whatever,
Yeah. Well, yeah, I mean, the whole family knew, because remember the mom was like, what if they, like, come send someone to kill her?
Right.
Right. And that's when Valia uses the voice on the mom and tells her to shut the hell up.
Okay.
So yeah, I mean, the family clearly knows that Tula did it, and is certainly under the belief that Tula did it because Valia told her to do it.
Mm-hmm.
And again, that kind of helped ostracize and get her out of the family, to the point where the nephew, the guy that is now the Baron, he, at the beginning of the episode when they're like sitting down for dinner or something, he's like, it's hard to believe this is the first time you've ever sat at our table.
Right. So,
you get the sense that, yeah, she has completely disavowed them and, won't even give them a truth sayer. Right. What did she say? The fourth time they denied the request?
Yes.
When you know what I mean? It's so yeah, I mean, clearly she's like, nope, I'm not doing anything with Harkonnen. I was thinking about that, wondering, is that like it's not secret, it's just not common knowledge, was my kind of thought of like, yeah, she's a Harkonnen, and she doesn't hide that fact, but she doesn't broadcast it. And so now it's 30 years later, and maybe most of the people out there don't necessarily know that. I don't know.
Right.
I was just wondering what you thought.
Yeah. I think it's one of those like common knowledge things. So
okay,
yeah.
That's cool.
Yeah, but finding out about his dad is interesting.
Oh, yeah, again. Yeah. Well, just because you just like, that's coming back, right? It's coming back.
Yeah. So the next big scene, we get the big scene in the High Council.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a lot that's going on in there. And ultimately, the most important thing is that, everybody, like I said, righteous but not pure, everybody in that room has a plan and an idea of what they think is going to happen in that High Council room. And Desmond comes in and he like totally flabbergasts everybody and turns everything on its head, because they're expecting to make this terrible accusation, and Valia and Baron Harkonnen are there to sort of get that going, and then the princess jumps on it, and she is a part of the accusation as well.
Well, she makes the accusation. The Baron
doesn't
in
his place,
say
but
it.
he gets started. He's about, and then she does it. So they're all sort of like lumped in together, even though she says the words. And then in response to being, outed as the killer of the Richese boy, he brings in this whole group of people, and we recognize some of them because they just were there with Kieran, and they are all people who have dealt in thinking machines, and they are all affiliated with members of the council. Like, not all of it. They're affiliated with a couple of the members of the council, and we even see them in this couple of the scenes earlier, before they approach Baron Harkonnen about making his little speech there or whatever. So these are familiar faces, and Desmond makes his proclamation about how they've all been caught with the thinking machine and and members, you respected members of the council and have been implicated and whatever. And he's basically saying, like, this is our number one law, and we cannot have any deviation. And these people they've all broken the law. And he asks the Emperor for permission, and there's this great pause, and you can see Mark Strong, he glances around the room a little to get sort of his sense of the room. And will this work? Will it go against me? Will it make me look stronger? Will it make me look weaker? What will happen? And in that moment, he makes a decision to move ahead and looks at Desmond, and all he does is just gives him a nod for permission. And Desmond goes to work and does exactly what he did with everybody else that we've seen, where he sort of invades their mind, and then they all start burning, just like the others that he's done this to. But this is sort of a larger scale. There's all of these conspirators who are like the black market people that he traipsed in and threw on the ground. And then there's also the nobles. There's a handful of them that are affiliated with these guys that are on the ground. And I made a note, too, that as things start to progress, that the closed captioning said the words crackling and sizzling, which I thought was appropriate and descriptive and disgusting all at the same time.
And gross. It was kind of gross.
Well, because we're watching these people burn from the inside. And it's a lot like, we were given this on sort of a small scale with, it was horrifying to watch, Pruitt watch this happen to him because he's just this young kid. And then it was horrifying to watch it happen to Kasha too, because you feel like, oh my God, she knows things. And I want to know what happened, and did she see it happening and whatever, and we'll never know because she's gone. And then he does it to the Richese dad just a little bit to punish him.
Well, and to get him to leave and not raise a stink about it.
Of course. But in each time, it's just been one person at a time. Although I would gather that the Pruitt and the Kasha thing, I think that has happened at the same time. But here he is in this room of he's doing this burning people from the inside. It's about 6 or 7 people that he does this to, give or take, and it's all at the same time. And you can see at the end of it that it affects him physically. He's bent over, and he loses all of his energy, and his back is to Valia, and you can see that he's got some kind of wound on his back and that he's bleeding through his jacket. And there's this great moment as he's walking out of the, he makes some proclamation or whatever. He's on his way out of the room and he stops by Valia and he puts his hand on there to get like some, he's a little unsteady because he's weak from what he just did. And he puts his hand down right by Valia and like looks her right in the eye. And then he leaves, he takes his hand off and walks away, and Valia looks down and there's blood there. And she picks it up with a napkin and later shows it to Theodosia. And they have a whole scene where she's like, we need to send this to Tula. She could use the DNA, technology that we have at the Sisterhood, and she can find out who Desmond is. And let me just tell you that I am dying to find out what that test is going to say. Like, what do you think of Desmond? Do you think he is a completely different person and he's just appearing as Desmond? Or is he Desmond and Desmond like just mentally changed from someone else or something else entirely?
My first thought, based on how the episode ends, is that he could be a shapeshifter.
Yes, that's also, I think that's the reason that we saw Theodosia's power.
Whatever her situation. That it could be like an imposter. It's someone like the real Desmond Hart is dead, died on Arrakis, and this person is just, this being is pretending to be him. I also think it could be Desmond, but he could be like almost like a cyborg where he has like a thinking machine inside him that's giving him these abilities, which I think would be ironic.
That's some irony, my friend.
Yeah. And again, the other thing is just what we've been led to believe, that like the worm, ate him and then, pooped him out, and he has super abilities now or something. I mean,
right.
So yeah, I don't know. I'm just as curious as you are to find out, and really, what is the DNA test going to tell them other than like where he comes from, like what his lineage is? But is that going to explain why he can cause people to burn from the inside? I don't know. But I want to find out as much as I can about him, because
I know
he's such a bizarre character because he's clearly crazy.
Yeah. And you can sort of sense, like, anytime they show him, like, I'm using air quotes here when I say having a moment, he never really looks people in the eye. Like his acting choices, he's never really looking people in the eye. And he's very like, he acts like his head is hurting a lot.
Oh yeah.
Whether he is using that power or not. So yeah, there's his speech is all very sing-songy, the way he delivers the line. And don't get me wrong, I love it. I think it's really great. But I mean, he like the word I would sum up is like, he is mad. Like, you know what I mean? It's different than crazy. It's like there's madness there, that he still is in control of his faculties and he knows what he's doing. It's just off. It's mad. He's just, there's a madness about him. He's tainted with mad. And again, if he met the worm, that would probably do it. I'm not gonna lie. But I love when he like the scene is unfolding and the Baron's making his accusation, right? And we see Valia, and she has got her eyeballs firmly on Kyrian, because he's like coming over to where the vent is, where he's gonna take it off so the little thing can get in there, and all these things are happening. And then right when the guy that runs the meeting is like, well, what house are you accusing of this treachery? And just before the Baron's gonna say it's the Emperor, that's when the princess shows up, and she's like, I'll say it, it's him, and all that's going on, right? And then, literally you get the in the audience, and they're all, gasping and so on. And then right when all that's happening, and just when she's going to make her move and quash the rebellion,
in comes Desmond Hart with all of his guys, and they have all these people they've captured, and you can see that they've clearly beat the crap out of them. They're all bloody and handcuffed and stuff. And then he, right in the middle of the room, is like, I totally admit it. I killed the kid. He said, but it wasn't a murder. He goes, it was an execution. Yeah. And I that was just such a great line where he just takes all of the sting out of the accusation. And it's like, no, we're not covering it up. We did it. And you know why we did it? Because like you just said, we have one rule here. One. And that kid broke it. And and this emperor guy, he doesn't suffer that at all. And if you break that rule, he will kill you. Right. And it was great. And you're right. The moment with Mark Strong where he's like literally like, oh my God, what do I do? What do I do? And then he nods, but it's not even like a full nod. He just kind of like,
he's just like, yeah.
But I mean, it's just so unsure, just so not quite there, like, what should I do? It's not obvious to him, but yet he does it. And then I mean, that whole sequence was just amazing in that all of those schemes all those threads came together in that one moment, and the way it ended was not how I thought it was gonna end.
Yeah, no kidding.
So and like doesn't Desmond Hart, he has the little drone. And he's like, they were going to use this to kill everyone in this room. And then he puts it on the ground and he smashes it with his boot. I mean, it was a great scene. It was so well written. And the guy who plays Desmond, Travis, whatever is, he, I mean, he just, again, with that character he's created, it's just, you're just mesmerized when he's on the screen.
And the whole time, like, Valia's whole plan is, I'm going to let them do what they're going to do. And you've got the idea that she's going to use her knife to stop the drone thing that's going to come out and kill them all. Right. She's going to use her knife to kill it, and that will put her in the good graces again, and all this other stuff. So this whole time that everything's been going on, she's like pulled her blade out, and she's holding it in her hand. And as soon as Desmond comes in, as soon as he holds up, she still has it in her hand because she doesn't know what Desmond's going to be doing and whatever. But as soon as he holds up the little drone thing that was going to come in and, kill everybody in the room, when he holds it up, everybody says, oh, and there's like all these gasps or whatever. She just like takes it, flips the knife back into the whole thing, and then slides it right back up her sleeve because she's like, yeah, we're not using our knife today. That's not
because she's just so smart. She gets it that like, okay, you know what, the gambit that I was gonna do, that's done. It's over. So now we're just gonna sit back and observe and see what happens. And I like it too that the Baron, when the princess comes in and goes, it was him, and the Baron turns to her and goes, what do I do? And she's like, nothing. She did it for you. So. The Harkonnens benefit because they're on the High Council, and yet they didn't officially go against the Emperor.
Right.
Because he never actually said what house he was accusing of this, cover up and stuff.
And what's great is the people who sort of enticed him to do what he did, they're dead now.
Well, at least one of them is. Yeah. One of them burned up. Yeah.
So it, there's less people in the world who know what he did. So
what he was planning to do. Yeah. That scene was phenomenal. The only thing I have to say about Desmond Hart so far that I have question of, it's like, okay, he's like the Emperor's like right hand man. Can we like get that guy another set of clothes?
Right. Can he, I don't know, shower?
Yeah, I mean, it's just like every time we see him, he's wearing like the desert fatigue outfit thing. Yeah. And it's cool, and it clearly sets him apart because nobody else wears that that color.
He does stand out that way, yeah.
And so on. But at the same time, I'm like, don't you think like the Emperor would be like, you're going to be advising me. You got to like look like my right-hand man. So we're going to get a nice, fresh uniform for you. No. No, I'm just gonna wear this old thing that I probably, like you said, haven't showered and taken off in like 3 weeks. So that's cool, right?
Yeah, and by the way, on Arrakis, it's hot, so you sweat and
sweaty. Oh yeah, I sweat a lot in this, like a lot.
Yeah, it does a lot of lunges too.
Yeah, a lot of right. I mean, it's just that's the only thing I'm like, oh come on, man, change clothes. You've been there for like a week.
Yeah, I mean, at least put on a bathrobe. I mean, even dude. Fucking Daryl took a bath, for crying out loud,
Yeah.
Oh man. After we get these great throne, it's not a throne room, it's the council room. I'm sorry, the High Council room. We get this great scene. There's these two. You and I put notes in there about these two really great scenes that we get with Valia. First, Valia is talking to her uncle, who's basically like, they come back from the meeting and he's very like, didn't work the way you wanted it to, did it? And, don't follow her. She'll bring you to ruin.
She's a sorceress.
Right. And the Baron is like, I don't want to talk about it. And he leaves. Yeah. And so it's just Valia and her uncle. And he really starts to lay into her, and she's terrible and you never did anything and whatever. And he's getting all worked up. And as he gets worked up, he's starting to cough, and he's left his little inhaler over on the table,
the dining room table or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she goes to pick it up at first, and it's very nice. Like, oh, here, I'll get this for you.
No.
Yeah. Yeah. See, that's his mistake was he should have gotten the inhaler before he started to like attack her and get her pissed off.
Right. Because then he just gets more and more like it's a combination. He's getting riled up. He's also getting he's coughing more and more. And and he's starting to lose energy too. So he's moving slower. So it's just this terrible combination of like, you should have thought this through before,
Yeah.
I have a question for you about the inhaler. You wrote down oxygen, and it very well could be because he's sick and, he's in poor health and he's older, yada, yada. But we saw them using the same kind of inhalers at the club. So is it oxygen or is it spice that he's inhaling?
The reason I put oxygen is that on the Max app, which is where I watch the episodes because I have cut the cord and don't get cable or anything.
Right.
Just like the AMC shows, like the Daryl Dixon show, the episode ends and then there's like a 4 or 5 minute little featurette about it.
Okay. Yeah.
And in that, both I think either one of the showrunners or maybe the director and Emily Watson both refer to that as oxygen.
Interesting.
For that scene. So, but you're right. It's the same kind of technology that all the kids are using to get high on, right? To inhale spice or some other substance. We don't, maybe it's something else. We don't know. But in that case, what the actor and either the director or the showrunner said was that it was oxygen. So
interesting. Okay. Yeah. Well, it makes sense that the young people could take something that's used for good, like oxygen, and then,
spike it.
I mean, I've seen people do worse things to create a bong, for crying out loud. So, it's perfectly, it makes perfect sense that they'd take something that's real.
Might we have
an inhaling device.
A new podcast for this, for the Aim for the Head, and it'll be Diana's bong stories?
No, I don't have very many of them, but
it'd be a short podcast.
It'd be, let me tell you about this time. But anyway, so we've got this great scene. She really she does not, and we don't know that he's dead. He passes out. So does he die in that moment?
I took it that he died. Yeah. I
right.
Took it that he was dead,
I think so too, because I think the only way she's going to be able to move ahead with the current Baron is for him to be the one because he deferred to him a little bit when he's like, well, my uncle is, and she's like, no, you're the future of this house.
I think technically the uncle is probably like the head of the household because he's the senior, but like he's sort of deferred all of the duties to to the younger guy because he just can't do it physically,
right? Which makes sense.
Yeah, and you're right, because there is that moment where the younger guy's like, well, technically he should, and she's like, no, you're the one that's going to do this. But yeah, I certainly got the sense that he died. Yeah, that she literally killed him.
I think it's likely that he died. Absolutely. But hello, it's anything can happen on TV. But it's interesting because let's say he does. Let's say he is dead, right? Which seems the most likely. In that moment, he dies, and she's able to sort of feel like she had everything to do with him dying, but she didn't do anything to him.
No.
No. I mean, she withheld the oxygen, but she didn't really kill him. She was responsible for him dying, but she didn't stab him or shoot him or whatever. No. She withheld care.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, and
still bad, but
Yeah, I mean, it's a different degree of bad, I would say. You shoot someone, stab someone, it could be an emotional heat of the moment thing. What she did was very cold and calculated and, psychopathic. I mean,
and I don't think she was planning it until she picked up the oxygen, and as he put his hand out like he needed it, and in that moment, she wasn't even sure she was doing what she was doing until she was sort of already subconsciously doing it.
Well, he reaches out for it and she backs away.
Yeah.
And then he so reaches out for it, he falls out of his little hover chair. And so then he's on the ground, and now it's well, now you're dead, man, because you're never going to get back up. And what sold it for me is that after he collapses on the ground and is still, she puts the oxygen thing back down on the table. Yeah. And the idea in my head was so then when he's discovered an hour or the next day, it's going to be, he was over in the chair, he had an attack, he tried to reach his thingy, he fell out of the chair and he died.
Right.
Right.
And makes total sense, and it insulates her.
Exactly. Yeah. Yeah. But I mean, their whole argument or discussion, she is they're both pointing out how much contempt they have for each other. And she is, he's accusing her of, she killed Griffin and she corrupted Tula and drove Tula away. And of course, her response is, Griffin and Tula are the only people in this family that are worth a damn, and the rest of you can all go suck it, Right. And you're cowards and spineless, and the fact that you guys lived on a whale planet, living in, surviving on whale fat, you deserve that, because that's how low you are and undeserving and so on. And again, it was a wonderful scene because it was like the faucets open and just contempt oozed out of both of them, and I'm sure those actors are trying to find ways of how do I summon up the hate to emote this scene, because this other actor is a very nice person and I like them, and now I have to act like I want them to die.
Right.
So, but yeah, it's a wonderful scene, and just the way Emily Watson, just so cold-blooded, and it's just your time is over, pal, and then he's dead, and then of course then the ghost of Griffin shows up, or at least what we think is the ghost of Griffin. Wait a minute.
In an episode that had so many holy shit moments, you could call them, between the shared dream and Emmeline, acting out the I almost said Theodosia, the Dorothea stuff, and Tula losing control with the shared dream thing, and then the drawings, and then Desmond coming in and killing all the people and whatever. In an episode that had that much holy crap moments, to end with Theodosia is a shapeshifter, and oh my god, what?
I know, you're whoa, I didn't even know that was a thing.
Right. Yeah, and clearly it must be something that's not common, because the way that Valia calls it, your talent, and she's like, it is not a talent. and you can tell the reasoning why. I mean, it's obvious. It shows when she's like trying to shift back, and the very end that it gives her a lot of pain.
Oh yeah, yeah.
Which makes me think that there's the possibility of Desmond, because clearly it shows him in a lot of pain as well. You know, headaches and pain and all of this other stuff. So, you know, he could possibly be one as well. But what did you think of that whole scene? You know, you've got the scene with Griffin, and you're trying to figure out what is this. As he starts to sort of melt away, you're trying to figure out what's going on. Then he picks up the dress, and you're like, oh,
holy forking shirt balls.
What did you think of the scene?
It first of all, I mean, you're right. Mind blown, man. I mean,
right.
It's just again, not if I were to if before that scene happened, if I were to pause it after the uncle dies and then make a list of the top 20 things I think this scene is going to end, that would not be on there at all. I mean, you know, I would have stuff like, you know, Mickey Mouse shows up before I would have come up with shapeshifter. But what I love about that is how well written it is, because it's Griffin, and she goes and she hugs him, right? And then the way she's talking to him and the way he's responding, it's like she's talking to him,
right?
To her brother. But
right.
Then once you get the context of, oh no, she knows that it's Theodosia. Right. And now she's not talking about sacrifice and, you know, and the Griffin character goes, you know, we all make our own decisions and all of these things that you think is sister talking to brother, but no, it's Valia talking to Theo and saying, you know, did I push you too far? And all these, and she and I thought it was just a brilliantly written scene. And again, I mean, the whole time I'm like, oh my God, it's a shapeshifter.
Yeah, no kidding.
and so literally the first time I saw it, the episode ended, and I kind of sat there, and the credits started rolling, and I was like, what?
Yeah,
what?
Did this just happen?
Yeah, and I'm like, that what? Yeah, I mean, it was just, it was unbelievable. What was your reaction when you realized what was going on?
At first, you can see when he's Griffin. I'm using air quotes there. When he's Griffin and he starts to shift away from Griffin, there's a patch on his cheek or whatever.
Yeah, yeah.
And he basically there's a moment where she said right then and there, she's like, thank you, Theo.
Yeah.
And it didn't hit me. I was too flabbergasted by what I was looking at. It didn't think of Theodosia. When she said Theo, I was like, is this the Baron? Because he was shapeshifting, it looked like he was shapeshifting into another man before, you know, he didn't really start to really show his Theodosianess until he was walking away. And you don't really get a sense of the Theodosia until he picks up the dress off the bed.
Right.
Right. These are your clues. But before that, and it's all you get is the physicality of that. And like I said, Theo did not read Theodosia to me. My brain turned that into the Baron, the current Baron, the young one, that he did some sort of weird magic trick and became Griffin for, I don't know what, but my brain just could not comprehend what was happening in that moment. And then you see the dress and I was like, is that Theo's dress? Oh, okay. I get it.
Yeah. Right. Yeah. Yeah.
Well,
and then it makes sense because Theo mentions the painting earlier in the episode,
right?
And Valia's like, "That's my brother Griffin," and then Theo tries to get a little more information, and Valia's like, "I'm going to bed." You know, she's like, "No,
I don't want to talk about this."
Yeah, this conversation's over. But they mention it and they show that painting several times, so clearly Theo knows who it is and sees it, so she knows what he looks like. And so then you're like, oh, okay, the pieces kind of fit into place. But I mean, unbelievably shocking, just because I didn't think that kind of a thing existed in this universe. So exactly,
yeah, and it's in that moment, like I said, when I was thinking that it was the young Baron or whatever, when he was sort of shifting back, and it wasn't clear it was Theodosia, even though she literally said the name out loud. in that moment, it's like, because you don't know who it is or what's happening. Like, is this a threat? Is it something good? I mean, Valia seems happy, but whoever is sort of shifting appears to be in some kind of physical pain. And I was like, so it's very unsettling. It was such an unsettling way to end off the episode.
Yeah, it was. It's just like you said, there were so many oh my holy fork and shirt ball moments in this episode, but that one just capped it all. Where you're like, what the hell is that? You know?
Right.
Yeah.
Like how do you just it's numbering them all was like you didn't need, like, this topped it all, and you're like, holy crap. And then as she's like walking out, and you can see that she's like sort of stretching, like almost cracking and arching her back, etc., in trying to, like, shake Griffin off, as it were. And when that happens, and then it's like, it goes to black, I'm like, you son of a bitch.
Oh, yeah.
Like, an episode did a really good job when it ends and goes to black like that, and you're mad. Like, I was like, mad at the episode. No. I'm like, no, you need to show me more.
Yeah. And it's funny, I got a little sense of, like, the outsider from her at the end there. You know how, like, the outsider, the shapeshifter guy, when he would change, you kind of had this, it's painful to him or to it to do it. And clearly that's why Theo's like, no, I'm never going to do that again. Because first of all, I probably would be killed as like a sorceress or something. But second of all, it hurts. I'm not doing it, and Valia's like, no, sacrifice for the greater good.
Yeah, so. And that was what my note was. This was like, once again, Valia makes a sister do something she doesn't want to, and I use the air quotes, for the greater good.
Yeah.
And in this instance, in Lila's case, she put herself through something. Like, I will do this thing. And then in Theodosia's case, she is the thing to go through. Like, she has this within her. Lila had to sort of, approach this other thing and have it happen to her, as opposed to Theodosia. She has it within her and needed to, like, tap into it and become it. So slightly different, but they both are the same idea. Valia just, like, trying to dress it up as helping out, and really just putting people through pain just for information, just to give yourself more leverage in, like, your game that you're playing.
I mean, it's all to help Valia. I mean, she says all this stuff about it's for the greater good, but it's not. It's just whatever her agenda is, that, whatever sacrifices other people have to make, it's totally fine. So,
yeah.
But, it occurred to me, though, like, that this actually technically wasn't the end of the episode. We're forgetting another thing that happened.
Which is?
In that it cuts back to Wallach 9, and Tula is down in the catacombs, and she's sitting next to Lila, and she's like, Lila, you really need to wake up. I need your help. You really got to help me. And then she has this crazy dream where Emmeline comes in and startles her. Somehow she gets down into the catacombs, right? And she sees Lila and, like, the carbonite thing that she's in or whatever. And and Emmeline's like, you killed Dorothea. You murdered her, and I'm going to tell everyone in the Imperium, and there's nothing you can do to stop me. And she turns and just walks away, and Tula gets up and comes up behind her and slits her throat with a knife.
Oh, yeah.
And it's at that moment that Tula wakes up, and it's just a dream. But then she looks, and the weird contraption that Lila's in is open, and she's gone.
Yep.
And then she goes looking for her, and it's super dark, and she can't see anything. And so she, like, turns on the supercomputer they have that runs all the DNA.
Yep.
And there's Lila, and Lila has the kind of the Fremen eyes going.
Yes.
From all the spice.
It's funny, when I watched it twice, I wasn't sure, like, when it came up the second time, I was like, are her eyes blue, or are her eyes just, like, reflecting the light that's in there is kind of whitish blue. So I think it's on the fence. Like, I think the Fremenness is there, but I think if they wanted to pivot away from it, they might be able to, and just be like, oh, her eyes were just reflecting the light in the room.
Yeah, could be. Yeah, so, you're right. Could be.
But it just really gave me that feeling. Like, that's pretty specific to do that on purpose.
Well, see, I'm thinking now that her lineage is going to come out, and she's from Arrakis.
Right.
You know, like that's what's going to be, because she doesn't really know who her parents were or anything, and I think that's going to be what's the reveal is with her, but maybe not. But anyway, so she's awake and back, and she's looking around at this like obviously forbidden banned technology.
Yeah.
And it's like, what is this? Right?
Yeah, and it's the ultimate. It's like a total AI thinking machine that talks to you, that it breaks all the rules.
Well, it's a lot more than like a little like moving lizard thing that the kid
had,
you know.
Yeah.
So yeah, but and that's how the episode ends then, is that she's back and she, Tula is kind of like holding her and comforting her, and she's trying to make sense of where she is and what is she witnessing. And so but again, you're right, once it fades to black, you literally, I'm like, no, give me like 10 more minutes, please.
It at minimum, please. I just need a little more.
Just a little more taste. Yeah. But again, like you said, that's the mark of a good show, when it ends like that and you're like, no,
you're supposed to give me more. This is no, I'm sorry, you're not ending now. Yeah. Is there anything that we didn't hit upon? I'm looking through my notes that I kept, and I think we hit what I wanted to talk about, plus, other things that sort of came up. Anything that you think we jumped over? I feel like we got most of yours.
The only thing that we didn't talk about was there's a moment about the middle of the episode, and I think it's after Desmond kills everybody, and he's back in his room. And he's like shirtless, right? And the Emperor comes in and sees the scars and stuff and everything. But he is also like dreaming or thinking, and he's remembering or dreaming his moment on the sand. And literally, it's like almost like we're looking through his eyes, because it starts and you see a thumper on the right, and then he kind of turns his head, and the view moves to the left, and there's a thumper going on the left, and then he looks forward, and there's literally this wave of sand that's crushing down on him, and then the worm comes right up and just engulfs him. And very similar to the image that the acolytes were all drawing, right? This circular blackness that's closing in on you. And it was just a really, first of all, it was a really cool moment, but again, it ties into, everyone is assuming that Desmond Hart is the reckoning that Raquella warned everyone about back in the day.
Right.
And we have the prophecy or whatever, that it's, a person that's born twice, once of blood, once of spice, which clearly Desmond fits that category with what we know about him. But now, like we said, we kind of teased at the very beginning, so does Lila. Lila technically is born twice. So maybe she's the reckoning that's coming to destroy them. I love how they're bringing all these kind of weird separate components, but there's like a through line that's all pulling them together.
Yeah.
So that was, I think that was the only moment that I had in there that we didn't talk about, other than I made a funny note of like, so I'm guessing that the rebellion has been postponed, when the leader of the rebellion is burned to death and they destroy the drone. So
yeah, we're going to have to go back to the drawing board on this whole, rebellion thing, and, see if is it really worth it? And, can we find another drone? That's going to be hard.
Yeah, we got to recruit a new leader. There's some things we got to do.
Yeah, we got to get back to the drawing board on at least, couple topics here. Yeah.
Well, do you think that Kyrian is, imminently going to be ratted out? Do you think that Desmond knows he's part of that cell?
He might, but I think if he knows, he's going to use him for a purpose. You know what I mean? Yeah. Otherwise, he would have gotten rid of him.
Well, he was in the room when he saw the drone. Like, the guy brought the drone in and he was there and the guy held it up and it kind of hovered and the leader guy's like, I got to go program this to, find the right room and stuff. So he was in the presence of this banned technology. So he clearly has done enough things to get the burning. I mean, he, everybody else that got it did similar, you know what I mean? So he is a candidate. I'm just wondering if Desmond Hart or his guys that went out and busted these guys, if they, did they stop with just the leader guy, or did they crack down and get the whole cell? So I don't know. And clearly Valia knows that he's a rebel. So
yes, and she also knows he's an Atreides, which is very surprising to her. So I'm curious if we're going to see some movement on that the next episode, like if that'll come to a head.
Yeah, maybe that's what she'll use to try and get back in with the Emperor. Is like, oh, by the way, your weapons guy that your daughter's sleeping with, he's a rebel. He was in on the plot. Oh, really? Thank you. So
he'll be like, that's surprising and upsetting to me.
And slightly. Well, let me ask my wife. But Anyway, no, I think that's it. I think we covered pretty much everything. Yeah. There were just some amazing moments in this episode. So.
Yeah. Now, ordinarily, we would take a break and come back and talk about our feedback, but we didn't get any feedback for this episode, so we're not going to take a break, which I think is usually the smart thing to do when we don't have any feedback. But we're going to ask you guys, if you listen to this and anything comes up that you're thinking of, or if you remember something from episode 4, send it in, because we'll still talk about it next week if you send in feedback for this episode. And we'd love to hear from you. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
Or if maybe you're driving somewhere because of the holidays and you listen to a podcast from like a couple of months ago that you never got a chance to listen to, or you finally saw the movie that we were covering and you listened to the episode. Well, let me just tell you, send in feedback on something you've watched as well. We'd love to hear it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
We would love to hear your thoughts on Fury Road or
Furiosa,
The Shining, or Return of the Living Dead, or any of the other things we covered, the Outsider, for instance, or Station 11, or any of them. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, exactly. Next up on the podcast, next week we're going to be covering episode 5. Not a lot of information on it. Title of the episode is In Blood, Truth. So I'm curious, is that the blood sample, the one that they're going to test? Or is it, because of fighting or whatever, they're going to draw blood and there'll be truths that, come out because of it? I don't know, but that's a
or does it refer to family? And like, we're related by blood and something like that, maybe? Because, I don't know. It's going to be interesting. I cannot wait.
Lots of different ways to interpret it. We are excited to talk about that episode next week. Just a little programming note. We're going to be recording a day later than usual. And I know we've been recording on Tuesdays for this show because of its premiere. It's just so late in the evening on Sundays. And we do like to be able to watch it twice before we get our feedback sort of committed to paper. So we have been recording on Tuesdays, but next week we've got my podcast studio, i.e. my guest room in my house, is already it's reserved by my wife for another purpose. So we're going to record on Wednesday. That's all. So you guys will have an extra week to send us feedback for episode 5 as well as episode 4, because you watched it and you listened to the podcast. So we're just, going to tell you, we're not talking to anybody in particular, but, Erica, we're talking to you. But I guess that's it. We don't have anything else to chat about. So we're going to go ahead and wrap it up. And anyway, folks, we look forward to talking to you again next week. But until then, as always, I'm Diana.
And this is Steve.
Don't forget to always aim for the head.
Because the body shots, I'm just telling you, man, they just don't work. To send us an email, write us at aimfortheheadpodcast@gmail.com. And our Twitter handle is @AFTHpodcast. Pictures and video are always welcome at our Instagram account, Aim for the Head Podcast, all one word. But the best way to keep in touch with us is to just like our Facebook page to get all of our updates in your feed. There we go. Okay, everyone calm down. There we go. Everything's fine. Diana started recording the call.
Okay.